Okay, let's jump in and look at some of this awesome homework that got turned in, okay? So let's start with the epic lyric Smackdown. And let's see, I'm going to start with this video here by Jason Warren.
Here's my null hypothesis. Easy yourself, fool, cause I'm on an animation mission. You better stop, watch as I possess your position. Don't blip, I'll animate your eyeball straight to heaven. HTTP 1080 29.7. And here's a cool tip, animation's got no filler. Cause I'm a keyframe killer.
Okay, awesome. So just right off the bat, I just think this is great. It's got really great timings and pacing throughout. I think all of the words are very readable on screen, which is actually really tough in this assignment because there's just so many words that come on, right? But I think Jason did a really good job with all the timings of all the words and stuff. And, you know, this isn't so much of a design class, but I also really dig the design that he put on here. It's very clean and very minimal, but there's still some really good contrast between, for example, the really squared off non-serif type and then this really like rounded serif type here. Just because I happened to stop on this frame, I mentioned this to Jason in the the homework locker critique, but I think this green is a little bit too low contrast on this sort of cyan background here or whatever. I think just be a little bit easier to read, all right? But I think, everything here is really nice. And one thing that I think is really great is that Jason is constantly, changing up the look and the animation and what's happening on screen. And that kind of allows the viewer not to get fatigued. Like if it's the same thing that's happening all the time, after a couple of examples of it, you just start kind of like tuning out of it. But he never gives you the opportunity to start tuning out because he keeps changing it up each time. And things like this here has got great like size contrast on screen, like only putting one letter on at a time, but making it really big. I think this is a really good choice, right? And, there's a lot of really good choices in here. A lot of good animation, too. A lot of nice little bounces here. Right? Now here, I think the bouncing got a little out of control. And you do have to kind of be careful that you don't, like, put in too many keyframes in here. And there's something, I think it's, okay, so when this bounces, this kind of, like, bounces down and then bounces back up here. And then this hits it and moves it up again and down again, but I think what happens is it's rather sudden here. There's just like a few frames for this action, and I think it kind of like crowds the frame with all of a sudden with action going on. Let's look at that again. I'm going to turn down the audio there. Yeah, as you see that, it's just like a little bit hard to see because there's just like a little bit too much motion here, even in this side to side. I think if you're going to have something this big, like position, kind of come in here and bounce, I think the bounces need to be pretty minimal because it's so big on screen that like the more that it moves, it kind of like dazzles our eye a little bit here, right? So let's look at 1, 2. So it comes in and overshoots 1, 2, and then it bounces back quite a bit, like maybe even more than it overshot in the first place. I don't know, this distance here, and I feel like the bounce back should be smaller, not like all the way this far back. It should probably come to like about here maybe, so it was like getting smaller each time, right? Like it kind of does it eventually, but I feel like that second bounce back is really big, and that's kind of maybe why this gets a little dazzling. Yeah, that is it, right? It's when it snaps back on that second one right here. It just goes too far. If you watch this now, tell me if you can see this. Yeah, it just like whips back too far, and then I think if that just moved over a little bit, it would be a lot stronger, right? So it's just one thing to always think about with large things on screen is, the action of all those things seem a lot bigger because they're like close to us or whatever, or they seem to be. So you have to kind of maybe tone them down a little bit. Anyway, I think this is a really tremendous job. The one other thing that I noticed that I looked at the project for is this moment here. Now, what Jason did was he had like a background layer of the whole sentence in this black color or this dark gray, whatever it is. And then he broke it down into individual letters so he could change the colors and have them come in on top, which is a really great idea. The only problem is when you do that, I think you need to maybe use a mask or something to drop out the words that you're covering up on this black layer, because you can see here, maybe it's hard for you to see, but I could see it here, that there's kind of a black outline around all of these letters here, and that it's so irritating. But even though it's the exact same size and it's right on top of it, you'll always see that little edge, which irritates the heck out of me, but it's there. So I think you could have either animated the original layer to just change colors, or you should have masked out the dark type layer underneath to get this a little bit better. Right on. Great job. Let's move on to the next one. And that is by Jared Chambers. And this one's really cool. He used a lot of angles. And his kind of thought here was to use a red kind of bar or cursor kind of a thing to drive some of the animation and to keep a consistency in here, which I thought was a really clever idea. So let's check out what he did.
Here's my null hypothesis. Easy yourself, fool, cause I'm on an animation mission. You better stop, watch as I possess your position. Don't blink, I'll animate your eyeballs straight to heaven. HTTP 1080 29.7. And here's a cool tip, animation's got no filler. Cause I'm a keyframe killer.
I know that song like by heart now. Anyway, okay, so this is totally awesome. I'm gonna turn down the volume here. This is awesome. It's also got a lot of variety, and it never dies on screen, which is so important and so critical if you guys are already at that point already. You know, so here's the diagonal move, and I think these timings look pretty good. I think, you know, he should have put this bar over the top of the letters so that it didn't, like, the letters didn't cross over them, but no big deal. And I really like this move here, that it just keeps moving to the side. This, like, goes on a lot longer than I thought it would. And I really like it. It's got a good speed, and it uses up a bunch of that pause in there very cleverly. And I kind of like even the progression that we see these keyframes get bigger and bigger as we go. Right? That's really fun. And then it kind of pulls this blue in as well, which is nice. So I think that's a really good movement, moment and movement. Here, I know this, I'm pretty sure this is on purpose, but I don't totally get this like drifting up action that happens here. I find, and this is just true in general about type on screen, that it has to stop moving for the viewer to feel really comfortable reading it. I know this seems a little counterintuitive, maybe, but if you have type that comes on screen and then it's even just slowly drifting, it's like the audience is waiting for it to stop before they decide that they're going to read it. I swear, it's kind of weird, but when type is drifting, it just makes it less legible for some reason. So I think what you want to do in almost all cases is kind of like have it come on and then at least clearly stop for a good pause while we're kind of reading it, and then it can keep moving or drifting or whatever, but I think it just needs to kind of stop and settle, and this doesn't quite ever settle, and so it makes me like less likely to read this word. And you know, I gotta say, like I love the design in here, and then he used this kind of like graffiti font. I think it's totally awesome and relevant, obviously, to the song. But this is also a little bit hard to read, and so I don't think it's like helping it by having it drift. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that. I think everything else in here is really great, and I think this is really cool. I looked at this project, and Jared used a pre-comp here to build the stopwatch, so I was really proud of him that he then put into his composition, so I thought that was great, and this was a really great way of turning the stopwatch into the O and kind of animating it even one step further. I thought this was really clever. So yeah, really great job here, and these diagonal animations are hard to do. It's very hard to like animate things diagonally because you have the horizontal and the vertical, and you can move them perfectly horizontally or vertical. But to line things up so that they're all moving along the same diagonal is definitely a little bit tricky. So kudos. And I like how you worked in these elements from the other assignment and kind of made it work. So I thought this was really great job. So thank you. And let's look at John. Now I wanted to call him Gagan, which is apparently the traditional pronunciation, but I think he said on Facebook it was Gahagan, so John Gahagan. Hope I'm getting that right this time, John.
Here's my null hypothesis. Easy yourself, fool, cause I'm on an animation mission. You better stop, watch as I possess your position. Don't blink, I'll animate your eyeballs straight to heaven. HTTP 1080 29.7. And here's a cool tip, animation's got no filler. Cause I'm a keyframe killer.
Alright, I love this image of Joey at the end. He looks supremely disturbing and gangsta-like, so that's pretty awesome. So this is a really great job. I think I really like the minimal and clean approach that you have here, both to the design and to the animation. And, I just want to point out a couple things that I think is really clever here, like this. So here, just this first reveal.
Here's my note.
In any case, what I think is really fun about this is if you had to have the word here's and my come all the way up from the bottom or all the way over from the side, it would take a lot more time and And or if you didn't have the time, it would just move really quickly, right? So either you're going to have the time to animate it fully on screen and have it look good, or you're going to have to kind of sacrifice some of the timings. But here, instead, he has it just move up from like over here, but he's blocking it so we don't see it. And so what that effectively does means that John can use a slower animation pace within the same amount of time to create a more fluid animation, because this doesn't just like whip on. It's able to take its time because it's only moving from like here to here, right? So it's covering less pixels, and so he can have it look like it's happening slower. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's really clever, rather than having everything always come in from like all the way from the bottom or the sides or whatever. So like that.
Here's my null hypothesis.
Right? Same with hypothesis.
Easy, so
Now here, like, he's got a little bit more time, so because there's like a little bit of a break. So he puts more of a longer pause there, right? And he has Easy Ease Yourself come in from off screen because he has the time to do that, right? Now I kind of wish maybe this would be a great place for a little bit of an anticipation if like null moved over this way first and then that way, and then hypothesis like a few frames later moved that way and then that way, and it kind of like pulled everything else on. That would be really pro also, but I think this looks really great. And yeah, all these little clever moves in here just save you a lot of time. So I think that's really smart. And you know, all this animation here with the blinking and everything, this is really hard to do this here. And I was really impressed by this move here, this move up, because it's pretty readable and it's a tricky thing to do. So good job on those bounces, right? I think this looks really clean and really good. Yeah, I think it's really sweet. Sweet job. Right on. And okay, we've got, I think this is Maria Sanchez Fernandez. She's abbreviated some of her name there. It is long. She's also spelled Joey's name wrong here. This is Joey Corman. This is actually with a K, Corin Man, but whatever. But if you're actually doing a music video for an artist, you probably don't want to spell their name wrong. Okay, so let's check this out. I love this one too. Little title there.
Here's my null hypothesis. Easy, so cause I'm on an animation mission. You better stop, watch as I possess your position. Don't blink, I'll animate your eyeballs straight to heaven. HCTV 1080 29.7. And here's a tool tip. Animation's got no filler. Cause I'm a keyframe killer.
Alright, so this is great. And it just never stops moving. And it's got really, really nice design, I'm going to say. I love the contrast between this sort of lowercase script font and this really large, blocky sans serif font. Really good, and all these, like, you know, the spray paint elements and everything, it's just all really working together. I love this bright color palette too. It makes it really like optimistic and fun for me, right? And I think all the types are very readable. The timings and everything look really good to me. I know that Maria had a little bit of an issue, she said, getting some of those right.
Here's my null hypothesis.
But I think all these...
Easy, so cause I'm on an animation mission. You better stop, watch as I possess your position. Don't blink, I'll animate your eyeballs straight to heaven. HCTV 1080 29.7. And here's a tool tip. Animation's got no filler. Cause I'm a keyframe killer.
Yeah, I think that all the timings on that are perfect. I don't know what you're talking about, Maria. I think you did a great job there. You know, I just think this moves really well. I love this part here. I think a bunch of people commented on this in the Facebook group, but I thought this was really clever. And I'm pretty sure you must have made this with some pre-comps or something. So good job to you there. And yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if you're feeling like the timings aren't right, it's just because the timings are so fast in this song and there's so many words that it's kind of hard to feel like you've gotten it just right. I will say in general that getting the timings exactly right is important, but the most important thing is legibility. So that even if, just for say, for example, this happened to some of you in your homework, that like you put a word in and it was just the right timings, but it didn't have enough time to be read on screen, okay, and this happens all the time. I would always opt to push it earlier, even if it messes up the timings a little bit of the words, because legibility and the viewer's ability to read it is the most important thing here. And this just goes for like putting type on screen in general, not necessarily for a lyric video, but even if you're just matching type to a voiceover or something, I would say, when in doubt, always bring the type on a little bit earlier rather than later, because it just makes it easier for people to read. Okay, so that's just a little tip from me. And Maria, this looks fantastic. Thank you so much. And Let's look at a couple more of these and then we will move on. So, okay, this is from...
Here's my null hypothesis.
Sorry, this is from Simon Tan.
Here's my null hypothesis. Easy yourself, fool, cause I'm on an animation mission. You better stop, watch as I possess your position. Don't blink or animate your eyeballs straight to heaven. HCT 1080 29.7. And here's a tool tip. Animation's got no filler. Cause I'm a keyframe killer.
Really nice job here. There's so many like nice little details going on in here that I think are great. Like even just this one little thing where like you're just like over a couple of frames, you have the word Mations, or the half of the word Mations get like a little bit thicker here, right before it goes out.
Tip. Animation's got no...
Right? It's just this little thing, but I think it's a really nice detail. I think all the, this is another case of like really nice design. I think the colors are really great here. Everything's working together. I think these font choices are totally awesome and interesting together. And yeah, I'm just really digging the design. But if we want to talk about the animation, I think it's also really excellent, this little transition on. I think, most people really got this, which I'm really encouraged by, which is when there's a little pause in the song, like before the words start or between some of the lines, like when you do have some time, to kind of fill those things in with other things happening. I mean, that's totally the way to go, right here. So like he starts with this little transition here, which I think is really sweet and good color, and just like gets us going right away. I think possibly since this is moving this way, he could have had these first few words kind of also come on that way. That's just that thing that I've talked about before, which is called reinforcing screen direction. I'll just mention this again, which is like, if everything's basically moving left to right in a transition, then the other things should probably move left to right too, okay? If everything's moving top to bottom, then other things should probably move top to bottom. If everything's just, say, like scaling out, then things should move like from the center of screen to the outside of screen, right? So I just think this looks really great. I like everything about it. I like this little turn here. This is a very like classic kinetic type turn. Not easy to do. I assume that he used a null object here, otherwise that would be really tough. And we will talk about nulls soon if you don't know what that is. Yeah, everything's just really good in here. Great variety and good job. So thank you very much. And last one I want to talk about is from our friend Steve Thorough. I think I said Thorough last time, but I think he corrected me. It's Thorough. Oh, did I get that right? Okay, cool.
Here's my null hypothesis. Easy yourself, fool, cause I'm on an animation mission. You better stop, watch as I possess your position. Don't blink or animate your eyeballs straight to heaven. HCT 1080 29.7. And here's a tool tip. Animation's got no filler. Cause I'm a keyframe killer.
Okay, great job, man. This really feels like a complete like little piece. I really like that about it. I mean, there's a lot I like about it, but this is definitely the freshest moment in the whole thing. I think this is so cool. The way that it builds on. And like I could tell just by looking at that you used a bunch of hold keyframes. And like I gotta say, I am such a sucker for hold keyframe animations. For some reason, I love the way that looks, and especially when you're combining it with really fluid things like what you're doing here. So great job in this. I thought this was really tremendous. Thank you, Steve.